Water scarcity already affects every continent. Around 1.2 billion people, or almost one-fifth of the world's population, live in areas of physical scarcity, and 500 million people are approaching this situation. Another 1.6 billion people, or almost one-quarter of the world's population, face economic water shortage, where countries lack the necessary infrastructure to take water from rivers and aquifers. Water scarcity is among the main problems to be faced by many societies and the world in the XX century. Water use has been growing at more than twice the rate of population increase in the last century, and, although there is no global water scarcity as such, an increasing number of regions are chronically short of water. Water scarcity is both a natural and a human-made phenomenon. There is enough fresh water on the planet for 7 billion people, but it is distributed unevenly and too much of it is wasted, polluted, and unsustainably managed. Water can be scarce for many reasons. Demand for water may be exceeding supply, water infrastructure may be inadequate, or institutions may be failing to balance everyone's needs. Water scarcity is an increasing problem on every continent, with poorer communities most badly affected. To build resilience against climate change and to serve a growing population, an integrated and inclusive approach must be taken to managing this finite resource. Water scarcity is a relative concept. The amount of water that can be physically accessed varies as supply and demand changes. Water scarcity intensifies as demand increases or as water supply is affected by decreasing quantity or quality. Water is a finite resource in growing demand. As the global population increases, and resource-intensive economic development continues, many countries' water resources and infrastructure are failing to meet accelerating demand. Climate change is making water scarcity worse. The impacts of a changing climate are making water more unpredictable. Terrestrial water storage, the water held in soil, snow, and ice, is diminishing. This results in increased water scarcity, which disrupts societal activity. Women and girls are among the hardest hit. Poor and marginalized groups are on the front line of any water scarcity crisis, impacting their ability to maintain good health, protect their families and earn a living. For many women and girls, water scarcity means more laborious, time-consuming water collection, putting them at increased risk of attack and often precluding them from education or work. Lack of data means lack of integrated management. Many countries do not have well-developed water monitoring systems, which prevents integrated water resource management that can balance the needs of communities and the wider economy, particularly in time of scarcity. Water covers 70% of our planet, and it is easy to think that it will always be plentiful. However, fresh water, the stuff we drink, bathe in, irrigate our farm fields with, is incredibly rare. Only 3% of the world's water is fresh water, and 2/3 of that is tucked away in frozen glaciers or otherwise unavailable for our use. As a result, some 1.1 billion people worldwide lack access to water, and a total of 2.7 billion find water scarce for at least 1 month of the year. Inadequate sanitation is also a problem for 2.4 billion people. They are exposed to diseases, such as cholera and typhoid fever, and other waterborne illnesses. 2 million people, mostly children, die each year from diarrheal diseases alone. Many of the water systems that keep ecosystems thriving and feed a growing human population have become stressed. Rivers, lakes, and aquifers are drying up or becoming too polluted to use. More than half the world's wetlands have disappeared. Agriculture consumes more water than any other source and wastes much of that through inefficiencies. Climate change is altering patterns of weather and water around the world, causing shortages and droughts in some areas and floods in others. At the current consumption rate, this situation will only get worse. By 2025, 2/3 of the world's population may face water shortages. And ecosystems around the world will suffer even more. Water pollution comes from many sources, including pesticides and fertilizers that wash away from farms, untreated human wastewater, and industrial waste. Even groundwater is not safe from pollution, as many pollutants can leach into underground aquifers. Some effects are immediate, as when harmful bacteria from human waste contaminate water and make it unfit to drink or swim in. In other instances, such as toxic substances from industrial processes, it may take years to build up in the environment and food chain before their effects are fully recognized. Agriculture uses 70% of the world's accessible fresh water, but some 60% of this is wasted due to leaky irrigation systems, inefficient application methods, as well as the cultivation of crops that are too thirsty for the environment in which they are grown. This wasteful use of water is drying out rivers, lakes, and underground aquifers. Many countries that produce large amounts of food, including India, China, Australia, Spain, and the United States, have reached or are close to reaching their water resource limits. Added to these thirsty crops are the fact that agriculture also generates considerable freshwater pollution, both through fertilizers as well as pesticides, all of which affect both humans and other species. In the last 50 years, the human population has more than doubled. This rapid growth, with its accompanying economic development and industrialization, has transformed water ecosystems around the world and resulted in a massive loss of biodiversity. Today, 41% of the world's population lives in river basins that are under water stress. Concern about water availability grows as freshwater use continues at unsustainable levels. Furthermore, these new faces also need food, shelter, and clothing, thus resulting in additional pressure on freshwater through the production of commodities and energy. About half of the world's wetlands have been destroyed since 1900. Some of the most productive habitats on the planet, wetlands support high concentrations of animals including mammals, birds, fish, and invertebrates, and serve as nurseries for many of these species. Wetlands also support the cultivation of rice, a staple in the diet of half the world's population. And they provide a range of ecosystem services that benefit humanity, including water filtration, storm protection, flood control, and recreation. When water becomes scarce, natural landscapes often lose out. The Aral Sea in Central Asia was once the world's fourth largest freshwater lake. But in only 3 decades, the sea has lost an area the size of Lake Michigan. It is now as salty as an ocean due to the excessive pollution and the diversion of water for irrigation and power generation. As the sea has retracted, it has left polluted land. This ecological catastrophe has created food shortages and resulted in a rise in infant mortality and a decrease in life expectancy for the nearby population. Even in countries with adequate water resources, water scarcity is not uncommon. Although this may be due to a number of factors: collapsed infrastructure and distribution systems, contamination, conflict, or poor management of water resources, it is clear that climate change, as well as human factors, are increasingly denying children their right to safe water and sanitation. Water scarcity limits access to safe water for drinking and for practicing basic hygiene at home, in schools, and in healthcare facilities. When water is scarce, sewage systems can fail and the threat of contracting diseases like cholera surges. Scarce water also becomes more expensive. Water scarcity takes a greater toll on women and children because they are often the ones responsible for collecting it. When water is further away, it requires more time to collect, which often means less time at school. Particularly for girls, a shortage of water in schools impacts student enrollment, attendance, and performance. Carrying water long distances is also an enormous physical burden and can expose children to safety risks and exploitation. 4 billion people, almost 2/3 of the world's population, experience severe water scarcity for at least 1 month each year. Over 2 billion people live in countries where water supply is inadequate. Half of the world's population could be living in areas facing water scarcity by as early as 2025. Some 700 million people could be displaced by intense water scarcity by 2030. By 2040, roughly 1 in 4 children worldwide will be living in areas of extremely high water stress. As the factors driving water scarcity are complex and vary widely across countries and regions, UNICEF works at multiple levels to introduce context-specific technologies that increase access to safe water and address the impacts of water scarcity. We focus on identifying new water resources. We assess the availability of water resources using various technologies, including remote sensing and geophysical surveys and field investigations. Improving the efficiency of water resources. We rehabilitate urban water distribution networks and treatment systems to reduce water leakage and contamination, promoting wastewater reuse for agriculture to protect groundwater. Planning for urban scarcity. We plan for future water needs by identifying available resources to reduce the risk of cities running out of water. Expanding technologies to ensure climate resilience. We support and develop climate-resilient water sources, including the use of deeper groundwater reserves through solar-powered water networks. We also advance water storage through small-scale retention structures, managed aquifer recharge, where water is pumped into underground reserves to improve its quality, and rainwater harvesting. Changing behaviors. We work with schools and communities to promote an understanding of the value of water and the importance of its protection, including by supporting environmental clubs in schools. Planning national water needs. We work with key stakeholders at national and subnational levels to understand the water requirements for domestic use and for health and sanitation, and advocate to ensure that this is reflected in national planning considerations. Supporting the WASH sector. We develop technical guidance, manuals, and online training programs for WASH practitioners to improve standards for water access. To benefit both people and nature, World Wildlife, WWF advocates for and supports organizations to become responsible water stewards. At the global level, we work on projects to establish an international water stewardship standard through the Alliance for Water Stewardship. We also support the use of water footprinting tools with the Water Footprint Network and promote other international initiatives with the United Nations CEO Water Mandate and the World Economic Forum. At the local level, WWF conducts projects that measure water use and river basin impacts and demonstrate solutions for reducing these impacts. WWF partners with businesses and industries to identify water risks and take advantage of opportunities to enhance water stewardship. The international treaty known as the Ramsar Convention was established to protect wetlands around the world. 40 years later, there are more than 2,000 wetlands designated as wetlands of international importance. This means that the country where the wetland is located has committed itself to protecting the site from development, pollution, and drainage. About 75% of the sites added to the list since 1999 were included as a result of work by WWF. WWF works to address institutional challenges to managing water resources and protecting habitats before the worst impacts of climate change occur. This work includes promoting climate change adaptation in international conventions and supporting the preservation and restoration of wetlands. We help conduct assessments of river basins' vulnerabilities to climate change and integrate climate change considerations into river basin management. Thank you for watching this video.